It's probably gonna be so loud.
I'm like, are we ready to go live? And you're like, yeah, your cord is wrapped around. So you're gonna unplug your mic.
I won't. I have enough.
Gotta give it a little slack there.
Enough slack.
Awesome. All right. As Marissa's beating the crap out of her mic, I'm like, we'll go live. And then she's like, Justin things, punching it. Right.
Making loud noises.
Think you're good to go?
Welcome.
Let's get it on. Hello, listeners. Hello, viewers. Everybody in between to One with Coach Blu and Athletic Director Marissa. We are here to provide you an outlet to talk about anything that you might need, such as mental health questions, maybe addiction recovery, everything in between. Licensed mental health therapist and addictions counselor for quite a while, a long time.
Yeah, over Marissa, 20 years, right?
Yeah, recreational therapist.
Recreational
head
therapist.
Of Team Addict Athletes. So between the two of us, I think we kind of know what we're doing.
Sometimes.
Right? Except for your mic, right? It's like trying to get that thing together is a nightmare. Nonetheless, if you want to join us, please jump on. You can jump on our social media. You can jump on live here if you have questions. You can submit questions through Facebook, YouTube, all the above. So
yeah, hopefully I'll find them.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Or through email and we'll answer them next week. But
absolutely. And we do. You submit questions, we will get back to you no matter what. So please don't hesitate to jump on, become a guest on the show. I want to give a special shout out and thanks to all of you for downloading, sharing, and subscribing to the podcast. We greatly appreciate it. If you are so inclined, you jump on, give us a review, leave us a little feedback. That helps so much. Helps us get this podcast out a little further, doesn't it?
Yes. Thank you.
Absolutely. And a website, addict2athlete.org. That's addict2athlete.org. You jump on there, you got all kinds of social media links. You've got content on there. You've got, links to our team store. You've got our sober and recovery coach certified training. Shoot, everything's on there.
Yeah.
You've done a great job with that.
And there's a search bar in case you can't find anything or where the drop-down menus are. So you can type it in and it will bring up everything from our site.
Yep. Current events, check out the calendar. You'll see all kinds of things the teams are doing and locations and even like live broadcasts that you guys can tune into. So it doesn't matter where you are in the world. You can really be part of Team Addict Athlete, right?
Yep.
Marissa, our Patreon subscribers, I'm a little bit behind on some of these things. We've been doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes, but Patreon, I want to thank you guys so much for all that you're doing for Team Addict Athlete. You guys are the backbone. If you'd like to become a Patreon subscriber, it's like us giving something back. You get to get first dibs on the extracurricular recovery playbook. Get interactions, we get to get things going. These guys are kind of like the testing agents of the playbook, and many of you are using it. So thank you. We got super fans. We got Jerem Thurston, Tracy Whitby. We got Holly Davies, Scott Foster, Coach Chris Williams, of course, Brett Frew, Coach Tara Butson out there in beautiful Telluride, Steve Riggs, and the Warrior Within podcast and personal development by Sensei KP. Thank you, our super fans.
Thank you, super fans.
These are rock stars. Our rookie level subscribers, we've got Kenny Roseman, Cher Bear, Sherry Polson. Thank you so much. And Earl Dyer.
Thank you, guys.
Our pro level subscriber. Thank you so much, Gary Thurston, rock star, man of my own heart. And our championship level subscribers, the top tier, the ones who qualify for all of the good stuff. We got Shad and Freya Robinson and the Robinson family and Ron and Dee Loesch. Thank you guys so much. If you'd like to become a Patreon subscriber and get to your hands on some official gear and some bonus content and really a lot of different kind of perks and features, jump on patreon.com/addicttoathlete and start listening to the content. Get lots of good stuff there. Okay, Marissa, shopkeeping, anything that these guys need to know about as we're moving forward through this life of recovery, of mental health awareness, of horizons, anything that on the calendar they should be aware of?
That I can think of.
We got a lot of stuff coming up this year. We've got the green light to go ahead and do some awesome things. We've got some races that we'll be putting together for the public and for the recovery community. And stay tuned because we've got some neat things happening. We'll let you know in
a few weeks, some good things coming.
Absolutely. So jump on. If you don't have a question, you want to talk to us in person, jump on, don't be shy. And we'll go ahead and kick it off with this first question. Marissa, there's a lot going on right now, specifically with people that, kind of talk about like, how do you reacquaint yourself or trust yourself after having like a life of addiction and scarcity, those kind of things? How do you learn to trust yourself again? Right? Because Trusting other people is one thing. It's the very first attribute we learn in infancy, trust versus mistrust. But what happens when you feel or you adopt a mindset that you can't even trust yourself because your best thinking's got you in some hot water, right?
Yeah.
I think there's some things that we can do. And this question specifically is about kind of second guessing everything this person does. And when I was talking to her about this, I was kind of under the construct that she does have faith in her abilities, but the trust factor of like, can I make good decisions in critical moments? Will I be so tempted that I will throw all this away for, said, substance? What happens if I put myself too high on a pedestal? How far will I fall? And I'm thinking maybe we got to shift the way that we're thinking about this, correct?
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, your mindset on trusting yourself, I don't think a lot of people put a lot of stock into this because they don't really understand it. But I think the first thing you need to do is become authentic with yourself.
Yeah.
Being genuine, being yourself, I think is not as easy as it sounds, because who are you, right? Without. This is the biggest thing we talk about when you're processing trauma, overcoming addiction, is you kind of steward yourself around like those attributes, the addict, the abuse, the victim. What happens when that starts to shift and it's taken away, and all of a sudden it's like, who am I?
Yeah.
Like, where do you start laying the seeds of trust in a situation
when
like
you've
that?
made lots and lots of poor decisions, you're like, why would I give myself the opportunity to make a decision and screw up again?
Exactly.
Right. So to me, I think there's a lot of things you can do, but one of them I would say is to look for people that you trust. Look for people that you look up to, that you admire, that make good decisions, and start watching them. How do they make decisions? What are they doing in that situation? What would they do?
Well, yeah.
And you just start copying that for a little bit.
Yeah.
And then as you start doing things better, then you can start building up your own trust on how you're accomplishing different things that now you're doing with a different mindset.
Absolutely. I like that. And as you're doing that, I would also counsel to write things down about yourself that you like. Sounds kind of silly, but like note taking and being able to point out these attributes, it really does help. But here's the thing. There's this group that Marissa and I do from time to time. And one of the tasks that you do is write down 5 things that you like about yourself.
Yeah.
That's the hardest part of that exercise for people, because it's 5 things that you love. It's 5 people that you love. And then when it comes to the 5 things, or the 5 things about you that you love, people always struggle with that. So make a little list of pros about yourself and don't include any cons, right? Only do the pros. Keep track of those things. Why do you think it's so hard for us to kind of list some of the attributes that make us who we are, make us strong, or make us authentic or genuine? Why do people have a struggle with that?
I think there's a lot of things, but one of them is so many people are just distracted by everything else. They don't spend the time to think about it. It's easy to make observations and judgments about other people and what they're doing, but we don't always turn inwards. And then there's so much negative talk that we have all adopted throughout the years that's all we hear are those other outside voices of things people have said or done to us. And instead of us, who is our authentic self and what do we say about ourselves? Not what mom or dad or that one teacher or your PO or, anyone else, but start looking at you.
Yeah.
And you have to start making better choices too, so that you can have some good things to start seeing and saying about yourself.
Absolutely. So there's a step that a lot of people use in the 12 steps. And although Addict is not affiliated with them, I think it's an interesting one. It talks about how you make a fearless moral inventory of yourself. And people get really mixed up on that, because what they do is they start kind of putting down all the negative attributes, things that caused their addiction, things they did while they were in their addiction. And that's not the way it's supposed to be done. You're also supposed to, if it's a fearless moral inventory, you're supposed to be putting down all the good things as well.
Well, to me, that's a time where you need to really look at who am I and what are my core values? And that doesn't mean what behaviors have you shown? You know, a lot of times people feel horrible about themselves and what they've done because they've been making choices that are against their core values.
Mm-hmm.
So going back and really looking at, you know, is honesty important to me? Family, love, trust. What are those things that are really, really important to you?
Exactly. And I think sometimes we get mixed up with that because, again, our I don't know, our nature is to go to the negative no matter what. I mean, this is just the way human beings are designed, right? It's a
survival
technique. And so it takes some time to retrain your brain and your mind to start seeing some of those positive attributes too, because I'm sorry, even though you struggle with addiction, you did that as a survival technique as well.
Absolutely.
So a positive thing, I hate to say it, but a positive thing about that was you are a survivor.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so it's like, well, yeah, but it was under a negative construct. That doesn't matter.
Nope.
Right. It only matters if that's the negative connotation you put to it. Yeah.
A lot of times those experiences also make you more empathetic, more understanding to other people. Those are all good things.
I think so. I think you also got to give yourself some time to grow. Right. When it comes to trust, I think too many of us rush into the process of what we want. And we forget that like stuff takes a little bit of time.
Yeah.
You're healing at the same time you're becoming more aware. And so, you know, while it's a nice idea, trust in yourself does take time. And I
Patience,
think
for sure.
You've heard me talk about this too, where I don't believe trust can be earned. I don't like that concept. I mean, I tell the story of my cousin when we were younger and he wanted to take his dad's Bronco out on I think it was prom or something. So the whole summer, all he did was work his tail off, trimming hedges, mowing lawns, re-roofing the house. I remember I was over there with him all the time. I was working. Like, dude, coming over to your house sucks, man. And he did this so that he could earn enough trust to take his dad's Bronco.
Yeah.
And then when he had the date and all this kind of stuff, I called him like, dude, how was it? He's like, I got grounded. I'm like, why? He's like, I guess, there's some, they call it Rocky Mountain pinstriping. Like he must have parked too close to a bush or something and a little scratch. And his dad says, you'll never drive this again.
It's over.
I think, dude, how do you know, A, you did that? And B, what the crap, man? All that work for nothing. Yeah. Like you earned all this trust and you put in hours and days and it was taken away. I learned very early that is the stupidest concept. You have to earn my trust. Trust is a gift.
Yeah.
And if I gift you my trust and I see you mishandling it, I'll just simply take it back. Like, hey, it looks like you're not quite ready for that yet. So I'm taking it back. Does that make sense? So I don't think you should do anything to try and construct your lifestyle around earning trust. When someone's ready to gift you their trust, you'll know it.
Well, and if you're doing things that are you're just being a trustworthy person, people are going to be more open to gifting you that trust, right? They'll start seeing it. They'll start noticing in your behaviors and the things you do and say that if you say you're going to do something, you follow up and you do it.
Absolutely. And I think even being able to gift yourself some trust is huge, but you've got to be authentic and you've got to be real with yourself too. There's this concept that we've heard of, especially with the secret and the law of attraction. I think we do need to still kind of understand that it's important to visualize your success too. Kind of put that projection out there on what you believe you being a trustworthy person would be.
Absolutely. Right? Our daughter just competed in the regional swimming championships over the weekend.
Right.
Yeah. I grew up swimming and sports psychology, positive psychology. We have the Olympics going on right now. There is tons of stuff in there about visualizing your race, visualizing yourself in the event and watching yourself get up on the block. How are you going to swim? Closing your eyes, blocking out everything else and just visualizing yourself doing the perfect race, the perfect thing. And that applies to everything else that we do.
It totally does.
If we visualize ourselves doing better, being better, making better choices, being trustworthy, we can start making it happen.
So I like that because I think it's also connecting with your inner needs, right? I mean, trusting yourself, it's going to take time, as we mentioned, but really being able to kind of like connect with what you really need. What is that trust going to fill in the void that you've created through putting yourself in situations or with, using things that made you feel as though it was taken away. I think it's important to connect with your inner needs. Most of us neglect this.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things I do when I help people overcome addiction by going to the core issue, not just teaching them how to feel better, but going to the core issue, has this step specifically in it. As you go through the thoughts and the feelings of it, the next question is, okay, so then what do you want as it pertains to that core issue that's causing your addiction?
Yeah.
And they all kind of sit there and scratch their heads because it's like, I don't know. No one's really ever asked me.
I've never thought about right?
what I want. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Well, most people say, well, I want to be happy. Well, I can teach all of you listening right now how to be happy if you'll all do this. Here, I can do it right now. You ready? I want you to do this.
Let's hear it.
I want you to smile as big as you can. Just smile as big as you can. I want you to hold it and just smile. You just keep smiling. All you out there listening, I want you to just smile, right? You do it for about 20 seconds, and guess what happens? Even if you're not happy,
you'll start feeling happier.
Your happiness starts to flood in. You know why that happens?
I don't.
Your face and smiling, even we've read this before, right?
Yeah.
Even if you bite a pencil.
Yep. I've read the research on, they just have people just bite a pencil, which is kind of a forced smile. Yeah. Their endorphins increase and they're happier. Your
facial expressions, your muscles, everything is triggered back into the mind. And so your brain doesn't know. It's like, oh, we're smiling. Okay. Well, I'm going to release this. Right. And so that serotonin dumps in. You're like, oh man, this feels good. Dopamine. You're like, yeah, this is awesome. But that's how you feel happy.
Yeah.
It's a fleeting feeling. So I say, what do you want? I want to be happy. I'm like, okay, well, then smile right now.
Yep. You're good.
And they're like, well, no, I want to be happy all the time. Okay. Well, that's not really possible. I want to say, what do you want? They have to kind of get into that inner self. They've got to get into that, like, okay,
it's kind of a deeper question rather than just, this simple, I want to be happy.
Absolutely.
But what does that mean, and long term, what does that mean?
So let's drill down on that for just a second too. Okay. So it's like, well, all right, if you want to be happy, then what's the source of your unhappiness, right? Let's say, for instance, it is a core issue and we're talking about maybe neglect, right? And so what do I want? I want to feel happy, which means I have to counterbalance the feeling or the core issue of neglect, which means what's the opposite of neglect? Involvement. Acceptance, right? So what do I want? I want to accept myself for who I am so that I can achieve all that I can, right? And it's like, all right, there you go. That's a decent want.
Yeah.
But the hard part about that is
how do you do that?
How do you do that? Well, that's the next step in the awareness circle, right? The action part. So realistically, you got to ask yourself, okay, what do I want? And why do I want to trust myself? And it sounds kind of silly and stupid, but none of us really reflect on ourselves enough.
No, there's not enough
some of these
self-awareness in the world.
Absolutely. And I think communicating openly with others through this process is so important. Like Marissa said, surrounding yourself with people that want to boost you up, that want to support you, and openly communicate with them about your thoughts, your feelings, about how someone can help you, accepting help when it's offered. Like them kind of pointing out things that they see. It's a big deal.
And just watching other people. How are they acting? How are they reacting? What do they do in situations? And you just model that positive behavior until you can start doing that on purpose and intentionally. And then you keep doing it until it starts to become a habit.
I think that you got to learn to manage your expectations too. Like, full trust, I think, is kind of an interesting thing as well, because there are certain, I remember early on in my addiction, as I was getting clean, my recovery, I should say, I'd go hiking up the Y Mountain and I would look out over the valley and I could see the neighborhood from up there where I can't go. Cause I knew if I go to that neighborhood, I'm going to jump into, said house, I'm going to bump into old friends and all these things. And I'm like, I know that will be dangerous to me. So I remember putting that perspective in mind and being able to manage my own expectations of, like, even here on top of this mountain, looking in that neighborhood across the valley is too close.
Triggers and things.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I thought, I've got to really understand what I can expect of myself. I can't just meander through that neighborhood, and so really kind of setting your expectations about, what you can and can't do as you're building trust is really important.
Well, I like how you say that too, because going up there and climbing up the mountain and being able to look at the whole valley that way, that also changes your perspective. Yeah. And when you change your perspective on any given situation, all of a sudden you can see things differently. And often you'll be able to look down and see, wow, I can't go here in that neighborhood. That's just too dangerous for me right now. It's too triggering. But look at all the other places I can go. Look at all the other things I could do. Even just going and climbing and hiking is changing your perspective. And being able to do that helps you see the whole world differently.
It does. And I think being vulnerable to yourself through that is really important as you're learning to build trust within you as you're making these changes, because I had to get very vulnerable and to understand that, although I'm buoying myself up and I'm, trying to get strong, with my drive, that I'm still very fragile when it comes to some of those things, that putting myself in those situations, I couldn't trust myself. It's kind of like, I remember when I was working at the county, and one of the funniest things that I heard, and it's one of the funny little one-liners, was you hang around a barber shop long enough, you'll get a haircut.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those stupid old sayings, but it just really resonated with me because it's funny. It's like, well, because it's true, right?
Yeah.
So when people say, well, I can trust myself, I can go to the bar and have a BLT sandwich and not drink. Yeah, but for how long?
Yeah. Well, and to me, it's not just that, but why do you want to put yourself in those situations?
Absolutely.
Even if you can be strong enough, because some people are, going maybe to a family event where everyone else in the family is drinking,
which happens,
and you
quite
can
frequently.
be okay for a certain time, but how long do you want to stay there?
Exactly.
It may be something like, okay, every once in a while I can get together with the family on a holiday, but I don't want to be there and be surrounded by that all
I'd
the
rather
time.
not be there and be surrounded by it at all times. And that's the thing too. Then I think also to be able to trust yourself, you've got to learn yourself inside and out. So I would say also, listeners, learn to read your own body language, learn to kind of recognize when your heart starts beating a little faster, learn kind of like when you start getting a little hot under the collar. A lack of trust in any relationship comes from unpredictability.
Yeah.
So if you feel as though there's situations where you can't predict the outcome, trust your body to tell you. I say this all the time. Trust your freaking gut.
Yeah. Trust your instincts.
Absolutely. So many times we get in trouble because we don't do that. And I'll tell you, most of the people I've worked with said that they got pulled over or they got caught doing something and they had a thought, I should take this out of the car.
Yeah.
They're like, nah, what's the worst that could happen? And then the worst that could happen happens.
Yep.
And it happens all the time. I've seen people like say, oh, well, maybe I should turn the wheels in the car towards the gutter on this hill. No, what's going to happen? They come down their cars, crash at the bottom of the hill.
Yeah.
Like, we all have these intuitions, these thoughts, right? And if we learn to read our body language and really kind of apply these thoughts, guys, we'd get out of so much.
Yeah.
We'd avoid a lot of pain. So, for this individual specifically, you got to stop lying and start truthing, right? Stop lying to yourself that it's going to be easy, that you're okay. Start voicing and advocating for yourself in areas and positions that you need assistance with, and then allow yourself to heal. You're going to make mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Own them.
That's the next thing is when people do start doing those things, then they're just so afraid because they've failed so many times that they're like, oh, then what if I fail again? If you're in a different mindset and you fail, you get up. That's okay. If you're not intentionally doing dumb things, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Then failures and mistakes are there as learning. They're there as stepping stones to, okay, reevaluate, adjust, become flexible and try again.
That's all it takes.
Yeah.
That's all
Do
it
it
takes.
again.
Make a moral compass, be able to guide yourself. You need that inner drive, that inner moral compass to kind of guide you through some of these areas, and then learn the signals that compass gives off, right? Know when you're headed the wrong direction. I like to say, kind of think the story all the way through, or maybe even imagine an outcome for a second and then let things go right. Like play the tape all the way through. I could go down to this place. I could go meet with this person, but if I do,
what could happen? Potential
risk.
Yeah. And are you okay with the risk or not?
Absolutely. If you are, lean into it. If you're not,
spend some time thinking ahead, thinking about it. There's a lot, in addiction, there's a whole lot of impulsive, behaviors and reactions rather than thinking through.
There totally is. And so I think this question that really does kind of hit the nail on the head is like learning to trust yourself is one of the hardest things. And I know a lot of times we're looking to have other people trust us, but really it's about you trusting yourself, because if you can learn to trust yourself, guess what everybody else does?
They're going to start trusting you too.
100%.
As much as we are good at reading other people, they're good at reading us too. And why would they trust you if they can tell you can't trust yourself?
Absolutely. So great question. I love that. It's one that I think, everyone should revisit at least some kind of point in their recovery about like doing that self-analysis, right?
Oh yeah. All the time.
Awesome. You got anything yet? Because if not, we're rolling on.
Go again.
This is kind of the same kind of, I guess, mindset coming from the question, but it's talking about, how do we stay positive during a lot of heavy stress? Like this question specifically was, how do I stay optimistic when things seem to be crashing down around me?
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want to be, there's the Pollyanna effect, right? Mm-hmm. Positive Pollyanna. Dr. Paul does a great, like a demonstration of using every word in this statement using the letter P. He talks about positive Pollyanna, perfectly, all this stuff. That one. It's pretty intense. So let's switch gears now. We talk about trust. This is a great question about how do you remain positive? How do you remain optimistic in a very like stressful environment, stressful world right now? Mm-hmm. What do you think about positivity as it pertains to like the way that you approach life? It's not always easy to see the light when you're surrounded by darkness, correct?
And it comes over and over and over again. So this goes along with, a question that I was asked, not publicly, but I'm sure this person won't mind if I share it. But, what's the point? Why do I keep trying? Mm-hmm. Right. And I'm just like, if you're always negative, they're like, well, there's no point. Why even try? It's not going to get better by being negative, for sure. And you're not going to feel motivated to do anything else or to try anything new if you're negative all the time. I know I don't. If I feel awful, if I think everything's so bad and everything's just sad and horrible and there's no way to help, like it's not going to get better by by looking at it poorly too and being mad. That's not going to change anything other than we'll lose our motivation. We'll lose our, any joy we have in life if everything's always sad, horrible. And I personally don't want to live that way.
No. Well, and here's the situation. And listeners, you've got to be very real and authentic with yourself on this. Now, we can talk about these principles and things, but if you don't apply them, nothing's going to change. Mm-hmm. So I like this because I think, first and foremost, you've got to ask yourself the right questions. See, a pessimist might ask themselves questions like, why did this happen to me? Or why do bad things always seem to be, plaguing me? Mm-hmm. When an optimistic kind of mindset would say, well, what is one good thing about this situation? Or what can I learn from this issue or the situation? Or what's one small step I can take today to help solve the situation? The same premise of like, well, that's happening. Instead of asking, again, the why me? Why not you?
Yeah.
This is kind of a concept that I think is really kind of hard to wrap your head around. I think you've got to reframe the questions.
Yeah. If you don't think that there's another option of something better, you'll never find it if there is.
There's not. Well, and I think too, though, in that positive mindset, you've got to find somewhere, maybe an environment where you can create a positive environment to live and learn in. Mm-hmm. Because most of the time, I think when we are in a negative mindset, we take a look around our environment. And what does it reflect? It reflects poverty or scarcity or anger or sadness or depression. Open the blinds, dust the house, vacuum, do the dishes, clean your environment, create a safe place for you, an emotionally safe place. Now, granted, I know that's sometimes difficult, but like literally just moving furniture around, making the feng shui a little bit more able to flow. You'd be amazed at what small things can do to create an environment for you to literally live in.
Huge.
And I think people that really spend time doing this and allow themselves to spend time in locations that make them feel like they can just breathe.
Yeah.
So important, right? Mm-hmm. And I talked about this in the podcast where I said, hey, there's these situations where I find that people that get stuck, they end up kind of living kind of in squalor. It's like your car, right? Like your car, if it's packed with wrappers and food, and like, sunflower seed shells and all this stuff, it's like, how comfortable is that car for you? Like, how can you feel good inside there?
You can't feel good if your environment doesn't set the tone for a good space.
So this is the victims and agents mindset too, I think, with positivity. Be grateful for what you have. Learn to see the abundance, even when there's a perception of scarcity.
Yeah.
You know what I mean by that? Like, you think about people that have had like literally nothing. I watch documentaries quite a bit, and I'll see like different different cultures and stuff where people will literally live in like homes with dirt floors. We were watching, I think it was what was that? We shouldn't say this on the air, but 90 Day Fiance, where that dude was over in the Philippines, and he was showering with a bucket and there's a rat in there, and he kind of freaked out, right? Yeah. And it was funny because to him, he was like freaking out, but everybody else is like, this is fine. What's wrong with you?
It's normal.
Totally happy, right? And so be grateful for what you have and forget about, the things that you don't. Seeing the scarcity inside of life will only create more of that.
It just constricts all of your view, all of the options, everything around you. So if nothing else, like, hey, it's not going to get any better if you don't change your thinking. So you may as well just try it. Right? One
of the things I think that's hard for us too on this kind of mindset to stay positive is to start your day in the most optimistic way you can. And I know sometimes that's not easy. I mean, today we wake up and kids have missed carpool, and kids are saying, hey, you're driving me to school because I woke up late. And it's like, dude, no. And, if you start your day off on a bad foot, it's going to domino all the way through. So the more you can kind of start your day off on a good foot, even if there's some heavy things associated with it, the better you're going to be. It takes practice to be optimistic.
Yeah.
And real at the same time, focusing on solutions rather than the problems. And I'm going to say this before we move on. Don't forget about your physical self, right? We talk about this quite a bit where we're learning and leaning into like, I guess the physical aspects of like what you can do to make yourself feel good inside. You take care of yourself physically, you're going to feel good internally. That's,
emotionally.
We're both doing some changes right now with the way that we're eating and things that I'm doing. And I'm like, I feel better, even though I feel there's a little scarcity in food I can eat right now.
Yeah.
But it's working.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of little life hacks I think you can do to kind of, see the good even in the worst. And that's
when you are struggling with that emotionally, to do something to increase your physical health or your spiritual health will help bring up the other one. So if you're struggling physically, but feel kind of okay emotionally, and try something different, and it will help bring up the other areas.
I think so too. And, when all else fails, lean on others for support. Don't do this alone. Like, and you don't need people placating to it either, but just like Marissa said right off the bat, surround yourself with people that boost you up, not tear you down.
Yeah.
All right. What we got? You got someone that wants to come on? Okay, bring Selena on the show. Good questions today.
Yeah.
Sorry, we're starting a little bit earlier too. We got a couple of meetings we got to touch base on, so that's why we're starting early today. Awesome. Miss Selena.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm okay.
Good to hear from you. What's on your mind today?
My question kind of goes along with a lot what you've been talking about. So we've had a major life flip in our lives, and I just stopped going out and walking completely, running. It just was too overwhelming for me, and I find that strange, and I don't understand why that happened, but it's been weeks now, and I still cannot motivate myself to get out, knowing that it's going to help the stress that I'm under. But it's just kind of like it's just become so hard to start again, and because it took so much focus right at first on Warren's health and everything, and so I just didn't really do it. But now for myself, because our situation's not going to change as far as his health, I just still can't get motivated to get out. And I just, can that be a normal thing? How do I get past that?
Yeah, it is. And it's a funny thing too. It's going to placate right into things like depression, right? And anxieties. and like the questioning what's the point then, right? And so usually what happens whenever any of us are confronted with any kind of tragedy or issue, we start kind of thinking, well, why? What's the point then? Self-care gets so hard during times of crisis like this because we just don't know what to do. And so,
well, and there's so many areas that are so overwhelming that some of the areas that we were doing well in kind of shut down to try to focus our attention on the here and now of whatever's scary, and so then we lose that balance a little bit.
Well, remember, it's kind of like that we think that self-care isn't important because we're so focused on the other person. So it's kind of like the classic, like, put your mask on first before you help somebody else in an airplane if the oxygen levels drop, right? Mm-hmm. And so the first thing is we stop taking care of ourselves because now we're so focused on the other person. And so that's the first thing. The next thing is that we might feel guilty taking care of ourselves when someone else is starting to suffer because we've been told that self-care is selfish, right? Yeah. And it's like, well, how would you leave, or where would you go? Because what if he needs you? Well, what if I need me? And maybe we don't know how to balance it yet because what you're going through, Selena, is kind of a new thing. It's not something that you're used to. And so then we confuse self-care with comfort, right? We're like, well, I want to just kind of be comfortable here. And so I want to make these other, my significant other comfortable. So I can put my needs on the back burner. And, after a while, it just kind of starts to placate into a routine. And then you wake up and you're like, oh man, I'm not doing good. Does that make sense?
Like skyrocketed, because I think because of that as well, like you're saying, I've stopped doing what was helping me stay stable, but like Marissa mentioned, it's hard to focus when you have so much focus on one thing to spread that back out. And that's what I've got to learn, I think.
You're right. Because self-care can feel like it's threatening a relationship if you're like putting yourself first and that Warren's not even thinking that, but you are. That makes sense? Like this isn't a Warren problem. This is a you problem, right? It's like, I know, right? Because self-care directly opposes addiction 100%. If you're taking care of yourself, there will be no addictions. Does that make sense? So I get what you're saying. And you know what? It makes a lot of sense, Selena, because as I was going back doing some video stuff for our year in reviews and stuff that keeps getting postponed, all of a sudden, when you came online, there was tons of outdoor recreation. There was tons of things you're doing. And the less you're doing, the more in your head you get. Is that what it feels like?
Absolutely.
Gotcha.
My anxiety, depression, everything is just skyrocketed. And even Warren will be like, you need to go for a walk when he recognizes it's bad. But then I'm like, I don't really want to leave. What if something happens? What if I need you? What if blah, blah. So I'm scared and there's just a lot to work through.
And maybe it's talking to him and finding out maybe there's a different time you need to work out or a different way you need to work out, whether it's maybe you just start doing laps around the yard or around the block rather than going further like you used to, or looking into getting a treadmill in the house, or a different time of the day when he's safe and he's sleeping, but that's an adjustment. And okay, how serious is my mental health to be able to be strong and available for Warren so that I can help him in the future too.
Right.
That makes a lot of sense.
And I
like that a lot.
And I know that he would feel less wary about me if I would just start doing it, because I know he stresses like, you're feeling crappier because you have stopped your exercise, but so he recognizes it. And I think I don't want him to start worrying about that. So I know I have just got to get going again, but it was a major, it's a major life change for us. And so I'm still kind of reeling, trying to adjust. So,
yeah, but that's the thing, right? We got to get out of the mindset that self-care means being selfish, because it's not. It's like we've got to really be in the mindset of like, I'm doing this for me so that I can be better when I'm here. And you're right. It is. There's a little bit of trust that needs to be taking place in yourself to kind of get yourself out that door. for, half hour, 20 minutes, what have you. But don't want to be, I guess, put into a position where you become accustomed to that relationship being based off of you being there instead of you taking care of yourself. Warren loves you because of how much you love yourself. And so when you start doing that, he's like, wait a minute, you're not doing everything that you can do to love yourself, which makes it hard on me because now I feel like I'm the one that's hindering you. So there's a lot to this. You're right.
He'll take some of that on and feel bad.
Yep. He'll feel
because of his health and things that he can't change. And you don't want him to feel that way either.
Absolutely. Right. So I would take Marissa's advice first.
And that's probably why he says, go for a walk. You need to get out, because he's realizing, how important it was to me and how much that did help my mental health. And now it's just like, so yeah, that's a great advice. Just what I needed.
Would definitely start in your yard, to walk down the street for a minute, even if it's, doubling back 2 or 3 or 4 times, I would start doing that and then see how the blood starts flowing there.
Yeah.
Because I miss it every day, and I just haven't had the strength to start again. But so I needed to get some advice and a boost from you guys. So
you can do it. Sure. And the weather, this next little forecast looks so good to get out there and just do it.
Yeah.
We may not be able to water our lawns, but dang it, February is looking pretty nice right now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's a perfect time to do it, but
get out there and enjoy it. But and maybe this is also having friends and family come over and sit with them while you go too. I mean, there's a lot of options you can have out there.
Yeah.
So
that's a good point too.
Yep.
All right.
Try it.
Close when I find it.
Sounds good. Perfect. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Okay, keep in touch. Good on you. That is one of those classic kind of mindsets too, that if I can't do it, no one can. And so, and again, Selena doesn't like asking for help. None of us really do. But care of self, you guys, especially in recovery, it is so important.
Yeah.
And even through your addictions, might sound funny, but a lot of us don't understand that we put a lot of stuff of ourselves on the back burner as we pursued and used substances.
Yeah. And it is hard because there's times where I get stuck in something and I don't even realize it. And then you get to the point where you're starting to come to your awareness. You're starting to have some self-awareness and going, yeah, I know it's because I'm not working out like Selena's saying, or I'm not doing this and I need to. And then it's just that last hurdle of when's the now? You always say, when's the now? How do I get going? When do I start? And just doing it. But when you get out of the habit, it's hard to get going again.
It really is.
So set something up.
I totally get that. And I understand it. And this happens a lot with athletes too. I'll be honest with you. It's happened with me. It's happened with athlete Smith. There'll be times when, even though we know things are going smooth at home, that we'll be out running, we'll be out doing something, we'll be far away, and we'll have these thoughts of I'm not supposed to be here. I remember when I was doing the Hoodoo 500, and I remember getting in my head thinking, my family's all at the hotel. They're all swimming and loving life. And I'm out here in the middle of flipping nowhere. What am I doing? And I got in my head so deep that I quit. And I remember I go back and you're like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm just done.
Yeah.
And I remember saying, I'm never racing bikes again. And that was a lie because I did. But, it's one of those things where it's you got to be careful about getting in your head like that. And then knowing that you have the support of your loved one to invest in it. And I remember Jeff did that. Jeff went all the way down to Moab to run one. And he's like, man, what am I doing here? His car broke down. He's having all these problems and stuff, and I'm thinking it's an interesting thing. And I think that stuff happens for a reason, but really lean on the support of your loved ones.
Absolutely.
I'm going to give you the gift to go ahead. All right. Well, Marissa, we've got to cut this one off early because we have meetings and stuff, because we got lots of cool things coming down the pipeline for you guys. Stay tuned to our website. We'll be having several races and events this year that will be first times. Yeah. And so stay connected to the webpage. We got some neat things on the horizon.
Really cool podcasts coming up too. So stay tuned.
Oh, today's podcast is going to be awesome. It was pretty
I'm excited.
Good. Absolutely. I look forward to you guys listening to Brandon as he's talking about his son and becoming a father kind of overnight, literally not knowing that it was even his.
Yeah. It's crazy.
You guys are going to like this. So keep an eye on our social media pages. Check out all of our social media stuff, whatever. We're on TikTok, for crying out loud. You're good when you got a TikTok account, right?
Yep.
Ridiculous. Nonetheless, check out our website, addict2athlete.org. If you have questions, comments, or things that we could help you with, don't hesitate to reach out. Marissa is quick to respond. Coach Blu here, not so quick. Marissa, she's on the ball. So jump on there. We'd like to thank Radio Ronan for all you do for Team Addict to Athlete. Athletes, we'll see you next week here on One-on-One with Coach Blu and Marissa. Until next time, go